Welcome back to Endangered Species Spotlight. This week we are talking about the Redline Torpedo Barb. This is the Redline Torpedo Barb. It is a little freshwater fish that is only found in a couple rivers and streams in India. Specifically, it is endemic to the Western Ghats region. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this is an interesting one because there's really only one very solvable threat to the Redline Torpedo Barb population, which is the captive pet trade. Really, the only reason that these guys are classified as endangered is the fact that they are almost entirely caught from the wild in order to sell to the aquarium trade. They are incredibly overexploited, with most of the population now having been taken out of the wild and sold into the aquarium trade. This is also interesting because this is a relatively newly established aquarium fish. Up until relatively recently, these guys weren't really popular in aquariums, but has suddenly boomed in popularity and are very highly desired by freshwater fish keepers around the world. Now, I've got comments before on some of my endangered species spotlight videos, specifically ones where I mentioned the exotic pet trade, where people are like, it's not that bad, it's actually good for the population, it helps with breeding numbers, we should just capture all of them and sell them into the pet trade where they're bred and problem solved, and that really isn't a viable solution at all, especially in the case with exotic fish, because the fish trade in general really is not kind to wild-caught fish. There is an incredibly high mortality rate, mainly in tropical fish because they usually are much harder to keep and transport than freshwater fish, but all around, the aquarium wild catch trade is not good for fish. It has a very, very high mortality rate from injuries and diseases and just incorrect keeping practices with the wrong water pH and salinity and temperature and all of that. So many fish arrive from being caught in the wild either dead or close to being so. Now, this isn't specific to fish, it also happens with reptiles and birds and mammals as well that are caught from the wild and sold into the pet trade. The pet trade really is not very kind to its animals at all, which is one of the reasons why just capturing everything and selling them as pets is definitely not even a little bit a viable conservation strategy. Now, that being said, this is usually, so the pet trade and exotic pet dealers are usually different from captive breeders because most of the time, well-established and reputable captive breeders are very different from that. Usually they are captured from the wild, the individuals in the captive breeding program. However, many captive breeding programs are focusing specifically on the conservation of the species in order to repopulate the wild areas, instead of a for-profit pet business trade focused on selling these animals for profit to whoever buys them, and not really giving a shit about the actual conservation of the species and the overall health of the animals. In regards to the Redline Torpedo Barb, they are very, very badly affected by the pet trade, which is pretty much the main thing that is causing them to be endangered, like I said before. As for conservation efforts, there are a few reputable places that are working on breeding these guys in captivity to kind of a two-pronged goal. Some, like in zoos and aquariums, are focused on breeding them to re-release into the wild, but there are a couple independent individual breeders that are focusing on establishing a captive aquarium-grade population, specifically kind of to sell into the aquarium trade to kind of establish a good captive bred population so the remaining wild population can be left alone and not captured in the wild by poachers. From what I hear, both of these captive breeding program approaches are going pretty well, and since honestly the poaching from the wilds is a pretty solvable solution, hopefully these fish will be well established back in the wild and not under so much threat from aquarium enthusiasts.